Did you know there's a 600-year-old book that has defeated every code-breaking attempt in history, including by the cryptographers who cracked Nazi ciphers during World War II? It's written in a language that doesn't exist, filled with plants that have never been identified, illustrated with astronomical charts that don't match any known sky, and populated by hundreds of naked women bathing in green pools connected by impossible plumbing. No one can read a single word of it. This is the Voynich Manuscript, the most mysterious book in the world. Carbon dated to the early 1400s, it has survived fires, wars, and the fall of empires. It has driven scholars to madness and cryptographers to despair. 6 centuries later, it remains completely unreadable, and nobody knows if it's the most elaborate code ever created or the most brilliant hoax in human history. In 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich was browsing a Jesuit college library near Rome when he found something extraordinary. Tucked away on a dusty shelf, forgotten and ignored, was a bound manuscript unlike anything he'd ever seen. It measured about 9 by 6 inches, small enough to hold in your hands. The pages were made of vellum, animal skin prepared for writing, and every single page was covered in dense text written in a flowing, elegant script. But the text wasn't Latin, it wasn't Italian. It wasn't any language Voynich recognized. The illustrations were even stranger. Page after page showed bizarre plants, roots shaped like animals, flowers that looked almost right but somehow wrong, leaves in patterns that defied botany. One drawing showed what appeared to be a tiny green dragon sitting beside a plant, as if inhaling its leaves. Then came the astronomical section, circular diagrams with suns and moons, zodiac symbols surrounded by rings of tiny naked women holding stars. The women appeared again and again throughout the manuscript, bathing in pools of green or blue liquid, standing in barrels, connected by networks of tubes like some medieval vision of plumbing or internal organs. The final section contained what looked like pharmaceutical recipes, drawings of jars and bottles alongside short paragraphs marked with star-shaped bullet points. Voynich knew immediately he'd found something extraordinary. But what? He purchased the manuscript, along with several other books, and spent the rest of his life trying to decipher it. He died in 1930, having failed completely. The book was eventually donated to Yale University in 1969, where it now sits in the Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library. It contains approximately 240 pages, though evidence suggests some are missing. And to this day, not a single person has successfully read even one sentence of it. When linguists first examined the Voynich manuscript, they assumed it was encrypted, written in a real language but disguised using some kind of cipher or code. That's when things got interesting. The text flows smoothly, with clear word divisions and consistent punctuation. It looks like language, it behaves like language. Statistical analysis shows it follows patterns similar to natural languages, something called Zipf's law, which describes how often words appear in texts. But here's what makes it impossible: the grammar is wrong. Professor Gonzalo Rubio, an expert in ancient languages at Pennsylvania State University, noticed something disturbing. In real languages, grammatical markers, things like s or ed in English that appear at the beginnings or ends of words, never show up in the middle. But in Voynich, these patterns are all wrong. Letters repeat in impossible ways, both within words and across neighboring words. It's too regular to be natural language, too structured to be gibberish. During World War II, American cryptographers William and Elizabeth Friedman, legends who had broken Japanese codes and helped crack the Enigma machine, spent years studying the manuscript. William Friedman assembled a team of the best code breakers in the world. They called themselves the First Saturday Club and met monthly for decades to work on the Voynich problem. They never solved it. British codebreaker John Tiltman, who broke numerous German ciphers during WWII, also tried. He failed. In 2013, modern computer scientists fed the entire manuscript into artificial intelligence systems designed to crack codes and recognize patterns in languages. The AI couldn't make sense of it either. Here's what's truly disturbing. If it's a code, it's unlike any cipher system ever created. And if it's a real language, it's one that bears no resemblance to any language family on Earth. For most of the 20th century, scholars could only guess when the manuscript was created. Some believed it dated to the 1200s, possibly the work of Roger Bacon, a medieval philosopher and scientist. Others thought it was a Renaissance-era creation from the 1500s or 1600s. Then, in 2009, researchers at the University of Arizona used radiocarbon dating to test the parchment. The results were definitive. The vellum was created between 1404 and 1438, with 95% confidence. Early 15th century, about 600 years ago. This was shocking for several reasons. First, it meant the manuscript predated the Gutenberg Bible, the first major book printed with movable type, by nearly 50 years. This was handwritten, hand-illustrated, an enormous undertaking in an era when books were precious and rare. Second, it excluded many theories about authorship. Roger Bacon died in 1294, over a century too early. Many other proposed authors were similarly ruled out. Third, it meant someone had invested enormous time and resources into creating this book. Vellum was expensive. It took the skins of dozens of calves to make this manuscript. The inks and pigments were consistent with high-quality European materials of the period. The illustrations, while somewhat crude, were vibrant and carefully done. This wasn't a quick hoax thrown together to fool someone. This was a serious effort. But serious effort toward what? A 2020 study, analyzing the handwriting, identified at least 5 different scribes working on the manuscript. All 5 contributed to the herbal section, but individual scribes handled other sections. One did all the astronomical pages, another the bathing section. Why would 5 people collaborate on a book written in a language nobody could read? Over the centuries, scholars have searched desperately for any identifiable element in the manuscript, anything that might provide a key to understanding it. The plants should be the easiest part. There are 113 detailed botanical illustrations, but here's the problem. Not a single plant can be definitively identified. Some look almost like real species, roots that resemble ginseng, flowers that could be morning glories. But then there are the impossible ones, plants with human head-shaped bulbs, leaves arranged in patterns that don't exist in nature, roots that look like animals. Are these real plants the artist didn't know how to draw accurately? Are they composite images? Roots from one plant, leaves from another, flowers from a third. Are they completely imaginary? Nobody knows. The astronomical section should be clearer. Zodiac symbols are recognizable. Pisces represented by 2 fish, Taurus by a bull, Sagittarius by an archer. But the surrounding circular diagrams don't match any known astronomical charts. The arrangements of stars and moons don't correspond to actual constellations. And then there are the women, hundreds of them scattered throughout the manuscript. Most are naked or barely clothed, with rounded bellies suggesting pregnancy or fertility. They stand in barrels, bathe in pools of green liquid, or are connected by elaborate networks of tubes. Some scholars believe this section represents medicinal bathing, a common medical practice in 15th century Europe. Others think it's alchemical, representing chemical processes or the transformation of matter. Still others see it as anatomical, perhaps representing blood vessels, organs, or the flow of bodily humors. But here's the most intriguing clue. In the 1970s, researchers identified 2 distinct dialects in the text, called Courier A and Courier B. Different sections of the book use different sets of common words and slightly different grammatical structures. This suggests either multiple authors working in slightly different styles, or a single author writing about different subjects in different ways. The way a medical text might use different vocabulary than an astronomical text. It makes the manuscript feel even more like a real book about real topics. But that just makes it more frustrating that nobody can read it. After 600 years, the theories are numerous. None of them fully explain the Voynich Manuscript. Theory 1, it's an elaborate cipher. The most popular theory is that the manuscript is written in a sophisticated code designed to protect valuable secrets. Perhaps alchemical knowledge, medical recipes, or heretical ideas that could get someone burned at the stake in medieval Europe. But if it's a cipher, it's unlike any ever created. Modern cryptanalysis should be able to at least identify patterns that reveal the underlying language. The Voynich resists all such analysis. Theory 2, it's an artificial language. William Friedman believed the manuscript might be written in a constructed language, an invented system like Esperanto or Klingon. Perhaps someone in the 1400s created their own language complete with its own grammar and vocabulary. This would explain why it doesn't match any known language family. But it doesn't explain why someone would invest years creating an artificial language and then never use it for anything else. Theory 3, it's a medieval hoax. In 2003, computer scientist Gordon Rugg demonstrated that text with characteristics similar to the Voynich could be generated using a Cardan grill, a sheet of paper with holes cut in it that, when laid over a table of syllables, could quickly produce meaningless but linguistic-looking text. The problem: the Cardan grill wasn't invented until around 1550, over a century after the manuscript was created. Also, Rugg's method produced text that only superficially resembled Voynich. The statistical properties weren't quite right, but it raised a disturbing possibility. What if the manuscript is completely meaningless? What if it's an elaborate forgery created to be sold to a wealthy collector who would never realize it was gibberish? Theory 4. It's a lost or unknown language. Some researchers believe the manuscript might be written in a real but lost language, one spoken by a small community that never developed a widespread writing system. Like the Rongorongo script of Easter Island, it might be an attempt to write down a language that disappeared when its speakers died out. Recent analysis has tentatively identified a few possible words. One label near a star cluster might read Toran, possibly referring to Taurus and the Pleiades. Another near a plant drawing could be Centauran, matching the Centaurea plant genus. But these identifications remain highly speculative and unconfirmed. What we do know about the manuscript's ownership is fragmentary and mysterious. At some point in the late 1500s or early 1600s, the manuscript was owned by Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II of Bohemia, a ruler obsessed with alchemy, astrology, and the occult. He reportedly paid 600 gold ducats for it, an enormous sum, believing it to be the work of Roger Bacon. After Rudolf's death, the manuscript passed through several hands, including an alchemist named Georg Barisch, who desperately tried to get anyone, to help him decipher it. In 1637, he wrote to the famous Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher, begging for help translating this Sphinx. Kircher never solved it. Eventually, the manuscript ended up in Jesuit hands and sat in their library for over 200 years, apparently forgotten. When Voynich found it in 1912, it had been untouched for so long that nobody even knew it existed. Why did the Jesuits hide it? Did they try to decipher it and fail? Did they consider it dangerous? We'll never know. Today, the Voynich manuscript sits in a climate-controlled vault at Yale University. In 2020, the university digitized the entire manuscript and made it available online. Anyone with an internet connection can browse its pages. Thousands have tried, all have failed. Modern AI systems have been trained on it. Quantum computers have analyzed its patterns. Linguists have compared it to every known language family. Cryptographers have applied every code-breaking technique ever developed. Nothing works. Here's what makes the Voynich manuscript so haunting. Every test we can perform suggests it's real. The parchment dates to 1404-1438, verified by multiple independent laboratories. The inks and pigments are consistent with 15th century European materials. The handwriting matches period styles. The illustrations, while strange, reflect genuine medieval artistic traditions. It's not a modern forgery. It's not a recent hoax. Someone, or more likely several people, spent years creating this book in the early 1400s. They used expensive materials. They worked carefully, with few corrections or errors. They created something meant to last. But why? If it's a cipher, what secrets were worth protecting with such an elaborate code? And why did the author never reveal how to read it? If it's an artificial language, who created it and why? What purpose did it serve? If it's a hoax, who was the intended victim? Emperor Rudolf II paid 600 gold ducats for it, but that was nearly 200 years after it was created. Did the original creator ever profit from the deception? Or is it something else entirely? A real book in a real language, written by people whose world we simply cannot access anymore? The most disturbing possibility is this. Maybe the manuscript made perfect sense to its creators. Maybe it was a useful reference work about plants, astronomy, and medicine. Maybe the women in the pools represented common medical practices of the time. Maybe the strange script was simply a regional writing system that died out when its users did. And maybe we're doomed to never understand it because the key, the context, the cultural knowledge, the shared assumptions of the people who made it, is simply gone. Lost to time like so many other things. There's a copy of the Voynich Manuscript on my desk as I write this. Well, a facsimile. The real thing is locked away at Yale, too valuable and fragile to handle. I've stared at its pages for hours. The flowing script is beautiful, even if I can't read it. The illustrations are detailed and careful, even if I can't identify the plants. The astronomical charts are intricate, even if they don't match any sky I know. It feels like a real book. It looks like someone's life work. And that's what haunts me most. Somewhere in the early 1400s, someone knew what this book said. They could read these words. They understood these diagrams. To them, this wasn't a mystery, it was knowledge. And then they died, and the knowledge died with them. The Voynich Manuscript sits in Yale's library, the book that cannot be read, surrounded by millions of other books whose meanings are clear and accessible. But this one keeps its secrets. 600 years and counting.